Hey everybody, welcome back to Everyday Journey. Today I'm going to work on my microwave. A previous video, if you guys saw that, I'll leave the link up here, the card up here. You can click on that if you want to see how I tore this thing apart. But today I'm just going to test some of the things that are on it to see if anything on it works, doesn't work, or what. That way I can get on with the project that I'd like to do. So let's go ahead and zoom in here and take a look at what we got. Alright, so here's all the stuff from the last video. We've got, what I actually want to use for this project is this fan right here and this control board right here. And as you can see, I peeled the buttons off of the top of here. I didn't really figure I just wasn't going to use this for sure. And I'm pretty sure I don't want to use these buttons because these things are they never really work very well anyway. Plus, look at how big it is. So, so what I got to do on this one is figure out a way to do away with that. So, I've got everything spread out here. I've already checked it to make sure that nothing is touching anywhere, so that I don't have an issue with anything arcing. So we're going to go ahead and plug it in and just test a few things here. So we see the clock is actually working, or the display is actually working here. All my buttons are over here except for the buttons that were down at the bottom over here. And from looking at pictures, this one I couldn't tell. This is what all the buttons should be, but the two or the three buttons that are at the very bottom, it's not displayed on this. So looking at pictures, it looks like the first one would have been for the night light, or actually I think it's for the fan. The second one would have been for the light or night light, depending on which one you wanted. And then the last one was a power saver feature. And I think basically what that did is, well, you can see it's right here. Where are we at here? This right here, when you push it in, it kills everything. So obviously it's saving power. Turn it back on or push it back in, now everything's turned on again. So it's asking right now to set the clock. I don't want to do that just yet. So going to these were actually the two push buttons for the light and the fan. And I can't tell which is which here, so we'll just push one. And the display tells me light on, and it says bright light. Now it says night light and light off. These, I just tested them just a few minutes ago. These bulbs are actually burned out, so they won't display it. But I did put, this is AC right here, so I put the multimeter in here, and I think it shows about 120 when it's on bright, and about 67 or 70 volts whenever it's on the night light, which is still quite a bit. So they are working. Not the bulbs, but it is getting power to there. So the other thing would be this other button here, and this one would be for the fan. So I'm going to hold this, just make sure. It says fan is in boost, and then that would be high, and that would be medium, and that is low. So that is really what I want to use, is the fan itself. Let's get a piece of paper here so we can see kind of what this is doing. And you can see right there, it's not doing much. That's low. But here's the boost. I mean, that's quite a bit. So I think that'll work pretty good for what I want to use it. Other things that are on here. Just so you know, and I should have said this in the beginning, this right here is the, I forgot what you call it. But I actually, the only thing that's plugged in on this here is just this thermal regulator here, or thermal limit switch. And that's just there because this thing won't power up, or at least this part of it and everything won't power up unless that is actually in good working order and is not tripped. So, but it's not actually powering this up, and I don't want to power this up because this is what would actually produce the microwaves that would hurt us. So, but it's not going to anyway, because I also have the capacitor disconnected, and at the same time I have the transformer disconnected. So for what I'm doing right here, we don't need either of those or any of those, so we don't have to worry about that. So the last thing I needed to check is this here, which is our this would actually rotate your dish in the bottom, and check and see if that's working, and then check this, see if this fan, which would be circulating the air inside the microwave. In order to do that, I'm actually going to have to, and I may have to do this with a few of them. Let's see if I can hold them all. These would basically be the door switches that would tell it whether or not the door is shut. So I got to look at this, and I guess we could do, I don't know, popcorn, I guess, would be this top one here. And it seems to want to do the time first. I'm not sure if it'll try to actually work without setting the time. So let's try and set the time. Looking at the buttons here, I guess let's try 1. And these may not even work after I peeled it off. Well, there's 12:45, so they seem to be working. It says press settings to select AM or PM, and I don't see, settings. And we'll go with AM and press settings to accept. So now it says the clock is set, and there it goes. It's showing, and you can't see this, I'm sure, but it says 12:45 a.m. So what I'm trying to do is simulate that the door is closed so that we can actually cook something. And there we go, cook time. We're going to say 1 second. We'll say 44 seconds. And start should be this bottom button here. And there we go. It's actually counting down 43 seconds. Problem is we're not getting anything turning here yet. Now it's paused because the door senses the door was open. So I can start it again. Now it's starting. And I do have the plate rotating there, but I don't have the fan rotating. So we know that part works. The fan should be going on, but again, that may be just because I have something here disconnected. But we do know that that is a 120 volt fan, so I can always just hook that up directly and try it out that way. So I'm not interested in that right now anyway, so we'll just go ahead and leave that be. But I do know that this is working. The main fan that I'm interested in is working. I know the lights are working because I tested those, and I do know that the display and all that is actually working. So now what I got to do to start with is get rid of this. I mean, it's working, but I mean, who wants that in their project? So I think what I'm going to do now is go ahead and unplug everything, and I'm going to try to pin out these. So we'll show you how to do that first. Alright, so as you can see, this thing is still plugged in, but we are going to unplug it because we don't need that at the moment, and we definitely don't want to shock ourselves. So for those that already know how to do this, that's fine. You guys can skip to the next video if you like. For those who want to see it, you can look up in the left-hand corner up here, and you can see the card for how I did this with the dishwasher. And that way I can find out which buttons were which on the display. But we're going to do it on this one. So all you need is a multimeter. I prefer, one that actually beeps, because it just kind of makes it easier. And we're going to actually set the multimeter. You got it set to the omega symbol there. And now to test it to make sure, just go ahead and touch it together. And this one beeps, but in the case that yours doesn't, you can just look at the display and you can see right there how it changes whenever I touch them together. And that's just testing for continuity. So that's all we're doing. I'm just happening to use the audible part of it too. What we need to do is see which pins here are going to that connector. Here's the connector right here for the ribbon, and all the pins are right here. All we basically need to do is push the button that we want while touching those pins, and see which ones beep. So it's going to be trial and error, and since there's some buttons I don't even want to use, I'm going to start with the ones that I do. So I do know that I want to use the 1. So I'm going to try to hold that button down, and I'm going to do it from the back side here just because it's easier. And then I'm going to go through and start touching pins. This is definitely not going to be easy. Alright, so I've got one pin, and I'm just going to go through and randomly check, or not randomly, but systematically just go down through them all until I hear beep. And it obviously wasn't that one, so I'm going to just move on to the next one and keep doing the same thing. And eventually, as long as you're holding the button down, you'll hear it beep. Alright, so I did something a little different now, since that other way wasn't working too well. I just couldn't hold everything. Actually took some test leads, took the other end of it, and connected some alligator wire with some alligator clips onto it, so that we're connecting these together, basically making it one wire. Then I disconnected the buttons, the ribbon from the back, and then we go ahead and plug it in, and we're actually just going to simulate what the buttons do. And what does that say? Energy saver activated. Yeah, it's just telling us power loss. And that's because I had it unplugged. Now, one of the things I did find on this is that we run into the problem with whenever you try to run the microwave, it needs, because right now I have these switches basically bypassed. I have them activated just by putting a rubber band around it and holding it, and it's simulating the door closed. One of the things I had an issue with is that it will not actually try the cooking. It'll tell you to insert the food into it because it powers up with this closed. So it's basically saying that you need to open up the door, put the food in, and then close the door again. So to fix that, we're just going to go ahead and let that one go, and then basically let it go back to being activated. So what I did here is I'm using these pins right here, these 16 pins, and I just went ahead and numbered them all. The first on the left here, that's 1 through 8, and then the next one's here on the right, that's just 9 through 16. And there's no real reason for that except for just for me to keep it straight. So then I went through and started checking, and I'm using these leads to go down through, and I just put the lead onto the one and then go onto the just keep going down and touching them all until I got it to do something. It's basically simulating pushing the buttons, except for whenever I did, I would note which pins those were and go ahead and write down what function it did. So one thing that I found is, let's see, what is it? Right there would be the cook time, and I can put in a number, that's 5, but right here you see that if I didn't do it fast enough, I couldn't put another number because it basically accepts that as 5 seconds and moves on to telling you to put the power level in or push start to run it. And that's fine, except for a 0. Whenever I was trying to find the 0 button, I had to do it quickly because first I had to enter in a regular number, and then I had to put in the 0 before it timed out. But I had to figure out which one that was, so I had to keep clearing it and going back through and putting in whatever it is, whatever number first, and then trying to find the 0, and I eventually found it. But it does time out beforehand. Once you have it and you know which one it is, it's no problem. You just go ahead and put in whatever number and then go ahead and put that 0. But it's just difficult to find. Other things I found too is while I was doing this is some things are in a kind of like its own menu, so it made it difficult. I had to clear things out, and I found out that these two right here would clear it out and then start from scratch. So if I wanted to go back to cook time again, I could do that, and then I could put in whatever number it was that I wanted to do. Like there's 6, there's 8, and there is my 0. So now if I want to start it, now that I've actually simulated opening and closing the door, I found out that this is my start function. You hear it going, and now it's going down from 67. You can hear the fan in the background. I lifted it up off the table, and by doing that it allowed the fan to spin. That thing just barely consumes any power whatsoever, so it didn't really have enough torque to be able to start it while it was laying on the table, which is a good thing because it would just spun and probably, I don't know, spun and caught in the wires or something like that. But that's why I said it's a low power fan, and you could use it maybe for an application where you just needed something that would consume less power or something like that. So like I said, I just went down through here and I just wrote down what each one of these did and eventually figure it out. So that right there gives me my pinout of what everything is, and I'm gonna, now that I know what it is, when I get to that point, I will just desolder this connector that goes for the ribbons and go ahead and solder in my own wires there to be able to go for the switches. So that part's done. Alright, so there we go. We now have the pinout for our switches. I can go ahead and remove that ribbon and put in my own switches. And the good thing about that is I don't need as many switches, because things like special features, like let's see, this thing actually has defrost, don't need it. Got the cook timer, may not need that one because it has a regular timer function, so I don't think I need the cooking one, so I may be able to leave that one out. Popcorn reheat, things like that, don't need any of those. So the main ones we'll need is the start button, the cancel button, the timer button, and a settings button, because we do need to get in there so we can actually change the settings for the clock, and then the number buttons. Definitely will need those. So but the other ones, we can get rid of them, so it'll save a lot of space for our actual needed buttons. So we should just have probably about 10 buttons with as the numbers, and then another 4, it looks like, to work everything else. And so that probably alleviates, looks like about 6 or 8 buttons at least, and not going to be needed for this. Now I could, like I said, just go ahead and wire this thing up directly for the motor and not have any of the other things, just have switches for those, for each of the speeds. And I could do that, but I think this is going to be neat just to be able to have this, capabilities of having a timer in there. You could probably have 2 timers really if you wanted to use the cook part as a timer. As long as it's not running the magnetron, it's not doing any actual cooking, so it actually just works as a separate timer. Our next thing that I'm going to do with this is actually get rid of a lot of the crap. Take away all the excess wires that we don't need. Like I could take all these thermal protection switches here that sense when it overheats. We just got a fan. There's not going to be anything heating up in this, so I don't need them. There's at least 4 of them here that don't need to be on here. The lights, probably don't need those, although I'm thinking whether or not I want to add something like that into it. Definitely don't need our smaller fan. You don't need this deal to rotate a plate, because we're not going to have a plate in this fan. So there's lots of things we can get rid of, and then we'll work on actually dealing with the rest of it, putting it together into a finished product into a later video after that. But the next video we'll go into how to clean all this up and get to just the bare necessities of what we need. So anyway, hopefully this wasn't too long. Hopefully you found it interesting, and definitely hit that like button, subscribe, put something in the comments. I might be able to answer it. Just hit that bell notification. That way you can know whenever my next video for this is out. And until next time, y'all take care.